graph I use to move from the short term to the long term. Look, I know we all want to talk about the short term because we all want to blame Scott Walker for this 58,000 job crap hole we're in. And that's good. You know, and right. It is right that we focus on the short-term deficit. But there is a long-term problem in the American economy that is not just about that question. And this graph I want you to see to kind of pay attention to what's happened with wages. This is just the median worker. And you all remember back to your statistics class, which was exciting as this talk, I'm sure, that the median worker is, if we lined up everybody in this room from the highest hourly wage to the lowest hourly wage, and then we pick the person right in the middle of the room. That's the median worker. So it doesn't matter how much more these people up here make. And this matters in the state of Wisconsin because we don't have tons of rich people. Our averages look bad because we don't have a lot of rich people like a corporate headquarters state, like Connecticut does. But so you line up those people and you look right in the middle and you say, what's your hourly wage, sir or ma'am? And in 1979, it was much more likely to be sir. And in 1979, that person, whoever we asked, would say, oh, about $16.50 an hour. I'm remembering this number right. I can't quite see it. Maybe y'all can correct me if I'm wrong. $16.50 an hour. That's in 2013 dollars. I'm taking inflation out. So you know, some of you may have been working in 1979. You think I didn't earn $16.50 in 1979. But this is inflation adjusted to 2013 now. 2013 dollars. And then you look to today, and you see that the median worker. And if I ask that worker, what do you earn? Oh, but first I'm going to ask you a couple questions. First, worker in the middle, what's your education level? Well, that worker in the middle is much more likely to have a high school degree, some college, even a 2 or 4 year degree. Much more likely. The whole population much more educated in 2013 than we were in 1979. The whole thing shifted up. And also more productive, right? That worker is working on much more productive technology. So, how much are you making now? With all that investment in education and all that investment in technology, what are you making now? $17 an hour. $17 an hour. That's 2 cents a year at the median increase over a 35-year period. 2 cents a year. That is a giant underlying problem of the American economy. It's unique to Wisconsin. It's not unique to the political calendar. It is a deeper problem about the relative power of workers, the relative power of corporations, growing inequality, decreasing capacity of the government or willingness of the government to step in to create more equity. It's about the power of unions and the decline in the power of unions we've seen over that period. That line and how stagnant that line is, and yes, it goes down in the 80s, brutal, and it comes up in the 90s slightly better, and then basically flattens out in the 2000s. That line is the long-term problem for Wisconsin and the American economy, and it is about misplaced power, low corporate accountability, and declining systems to hold corporations accountable. Because you know what? We make 70% more goods and services today than we did in 1979. And if the median worker is getting paid the same wage as they were, basically, in 1979, someone's getting rich. That's the inequality that this economy has driven, tolerated, and helped to fuel over the last 35 years. That's the bigger problem than even the short-term problem. So that one is worth coming back for sure. It's always fun. It's not very fun. It's just a bunch of bad news. Here's one last bit of bad news. I'm stopping with the bad news. I'm stopping too. Maybe that's the best news. I'm stopping too. This is at Canada. I went to, actually, Andy Gary sent me an email saying, what's the rate of the union trajectory in Dane County? So I looked it up, because actually, if you look at the public sector unionization rates that are available through the survey in the state of Wisconsin, you see pretty bad post-Act 10 news. The public sector in the state of Wisconsin, on average, runs around 55% union or covered by union contracts, basically from time immemorial to 2011. In 2012 and 13, it begins to drift down. So now it's 1 in 3. Instead of more than half of workers, 1 in 3 public sector workers. And you all know, who have been paying attention, and I'm sure you all have, to the structure of the public sector and the way Act 10 works, is that some of it's going to bleed out over time. Contracts are going to end, but they're still holding, so that we know that that number is not, and some people have recertified once, but may not again. That number will continue to fall down. It's worth remembering that public sector unionization was holding up, in a way, the whole unionization rate of the economy. The private sector unionization rate fell below 10% in 2010, and now hovers around 7 or 8%. Less than 1 in 10 workers. And let me say, this is just like unemployment. Low unionization rates are bad news. Just like unemployment. Unemployment's bad for the unemployed. Low unionization rates are bad for unions. But it is bad for working people. It is the same thing that when unions decline, it is a different dynamic in terms of making a wage claim, even in a union shop, as you know, right? So that in Las Vegas, housekeepers make $15 an hour or more, and that's the union and, in fact, non-union rates. But in non-union town, hotel housekeepers make $8 or 9 or 10, whether they're in union or non-union shops, because the union shops, which are so few, cannot get that far outside in the cost structures. So you need density to make wage floor raising happen. It doesn't happen for just you either. It happens across the economy. It pushes wages up across the economy. So that's the bad news on the private sector side, but then the public sector side, to see that so damaged. And it's no surprise. I mean, I know that, like looking for the results of Act 10 in the data is like kind of, well, duh. But, data is what I have. So, but I was going to say the Dane County rate, you see that one fall from above 50% in 1 year to 1 in 4 workers. And so that's the most direct effect. And that's the state workers, because MTI and the county and city all held their contracts across 2012. So that's just the Act 10 effect. It's really devastating in Dane County for sure. So this gets us to the last slide, which is really just the first slide, or we can skip it and look at me. Kind of weird. Just finger coffee.
Just imagine what other.
Yeah, I know. I know. Okay, so that's my bottom line on the Wisconsin economy. That's what's happened for the last 40 years. But I think that the summary, so then I feel like this is this giant downer parade, and I'm sorry to rain on this day, this beautiful day, this bad news for working people. But I want to remind you that there's only really one answer to this, and that also is in this room with all this bad news. There is an answer about how we build this economy and what we expect from this economy and how we get there. That is about 2 things and 1 set of people. One thing is we need to expect more from government. We need to reward the workers who are in it. We need to invest in education and the long-term infrastructure that holds this state together and our communities together. That takes taxes. That takes investment. That